So let me show you a few things about NASA that you never knew. Starting with this mission. This is the Discovery mission, the mission currently orbiting right now, STS-120, 7 astronauts visiting the space station, taking a new spacecraft, part of the assembly process of the International Space Station, what Mike and I call ISIS, even though there's not another I in there. ISS, International Space Station, is a code for ISIS. And you'll find out what ISIS means later on this afternoon. So Discovery 120 was launched on the 23rd of 2007, which was Tuesday, a week and a half ago, at 11:38 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So far, so good. With that as a backdrop, my question to the press was, what if the NASA that you thought you knew had been a lie? And what if I could lay out evidence that, in fact, that is the truth? In the book, we have a quote from George Keyworth, who was the former science advisor to President Ronald Reagan back during the Reagan years. And on March 14th of 1985, he was called to testify on Capitol Hill, as officials of government are from time to time, many times. And he said this as part of his testimony. He said, all government agencies lie part of the time. But NASA is the only one I've ever encountered that does so routinely. Now, this is an establishment kind of guy. This is not some, flake from New Mexico wearing a bolo. This is a guy that was the science advisor to a president of the United States who basically set science and technology policy for the U.S. government during the entire Reagan years. So what is he doing in public in 1985 saying, oh, and by the way, this agency that I kind of have to keep looking at, they're lying to you. They're lying about this, they're lying about that, they're lying about, he never was specific about what the lies were, but he said over and over again that NASA lied. So let me give you a stunning example of how NASA lies and why it is important, why it's more than an academic exercise. This is the current mission patch for STS-120, Discovery up there right now. So far, so good. You can look at various symbolism. One of the kind of interesting things is you've got the shuttle, you've got the Harmony node, which is the new piece of hardware they're taking up to attach to the station, which they did successfully a few days ago. You've got, sunburst representing, something. You've got a kind of a swirl orbits the Earth limb. You've got Moon and Mars, because this is part of the new exploration initiative from the president, which we'll talk about shortly. Moon and Mars out there. And then kind of draped in between as a backdrop, you got the constellation of Orion. Now, Mike is going to go into exquisite detail with photographs, which apparently this computer is now happy little computer, yes, and is going to be able to show you, showing that Orion wends its way in the most arcane and artful form through NASA's entire history. And what we're going to do is a prelude to taking home your book and curling up in bed and reading it all by your lonesome, plenty of time to absorb and reread and go back and say, my God, they didn't say that, did they? Yes, we did. Many times you'll find things that are going to be very interesting for you to read, because, this is time to basically, tell all the truth and not tell it slant, contravening Emily Dickinson. So Orion is part of the tale, as you will see. Well, this is not exactly part of the tale, but it is, because this is also the 30th anniversary year of Star Wars. Now, what does Star Wars have to do with NASA and this shuttle mission? Have I made an abrupt left-hand turn here? Not exactly, because they are carrying on this mission a movie prop, a plastic movie prop, the handle, the dead, non-working handle of a lightsaber in a carrying case, you're going to see shortly, on this shuttle mission, orbiting around and around the Earth, and it's going to travel at least 6, actually more millions of miles now, before they bring it home next week. So they plan to carry this lightsaber with non-working. What I found astonishing is if you go to the internet, I mean, God bless the internet, and you go to the internet and you find out how really bizarre people are. Because there were people reporting Well, they better not turn it on. It will damage the spacecraft. I'm serious. And if you think that's funny, I was listening to a late night ABC News break, between coasts, waiting there, my cue to come on or something, and I hear the actual news guy for the ABC Network News reporting on this lightsaber that was leaving, going on, and it says, and the lightsaber is deliberately made inoperable so the spacecraft will not be jeopardized. And I'm thinking, where have these clowns been? The line between fact and fiction is non-existent, or as I've often said, the internet is for those, has given voice to those who should never have voices. Anyway, so yes, they've taken this movie prop. In fact, let me show you what they've actually taken. This is, of course, Luke with the working lightsaber. Okay. This is the one that they're taking into orbit. This guy is Roger Borenstein, I think. He is the marketing director for Space Center Houston, which is the visitor center outside the gates and the fences at the Johnson Space Center, which is the manned spacecraft center controlling the shuttle mission in Houston, Texas. And he flew to Oakland. And I took out, because there was no time, you've got 2 hours and you've got to show the press important things. I showed how he was met by a whole bunch of stormtroopers and Yodas and Darth Vader types and Wookiees and all that for the official handoff of the lightsaber. Then there's all these marketing shots of him going to the airport and getting on the plane, landing in Houston at Hobby International. This is it. This is a piece of plastic in this aluminum carrying case with foam around it that they're carrying. Well, why this big deal? Why are they making such a big deal? I mean, again, knowing what Mike and I know, and obviously if you listen to Coast, a lot of you also know, that nothing NASA does is done just for the reasons that are given out in the mainstream. Because the mainstream doesn't get it. They wouldn't know a conspiracy or a plot or a multi-level metaphor if it bit them in a delicate part of their anatomy. Would you like me to clean that up for theater? So why the big deal about this guy? I mean, come on, I like the Star Wars, epics. I got into it back in 1977 when the first movie came out. I remember that one of my friends who was a high-level management person from ABC, her name was Joan Winston, raving Elvis fan, and I went to the theater on some afternoon in 1977 together in New York, and we watched Star Wars sitting in like the first or second row. It was a cool entree into a whole new way of movie making and, film magic and story. I mean, Lucas was and still is a genius, but really, what does Star Wars have to do with NASA? We came in peace for all mankind. Oh yeah, here's our lightsaber. No, something else. I said to myself, something else has to be going on. This is not the entire picture. For instance, here's the rundown. All right, here's the manifest. STS-120, Discovery 7 crew, Launchpad 39A. Okay, hold the phone right there. Anybody notice an interesting pattern in these numbers? Like STS-120, 120 is tetrahedral. If you take an equilateral triangle, every 120 degrees, you've got a point, right? The same with the 3D version, which is a tetrahedron. Okay, we have 7 crew members. Oh, isn't that special? That's tetrahedral too. There are 7 symmetry ways to spin a tetrahedron. So we have tetrahedral redundance in this mission. There can only be, by the way, in all of NASA's history, one time when you launch STS-120. It's the 120th space shuttle launch. That's where the number comes from.